Some people are going to get angry with this video, and I get it, because cars are not just four-wheeled machines. They are symbols of freedom, of independence, of dreams fulfilled. Many remember the car they learned to drive in, the family car they traveled in on vacation, or that model they always wanted to have in the garage as a sign of personal success. But the truth is that not all cars deliver what they promise. Some brands seem reliable in commercials, show impressive designs in showrooms, offer futuristic technologies, and even tempting prices. But behind that facade, they hide chronic problems: engines that fail prematurely, transmissions that cost a fortune to repair, electronic components that fail at the worst moment, and an after-sales service that, instead of helping you, often makes the situation worse. That's why, today, I'm going to show you the 11 worst car brands you should avoid in 2025. Brands that were once respected, that had golden eras, but today accumulate more complaints than praise. And watch out, because there are names that will surprise you. Industry giants that were once synonymous with pride and now drag a tarnished reputation. And I want you to tell me in the comments, which brand, in your opinion, should be on this list. Can you guess which one is in first place? If you guess right, I promise that in part 2, I will put your comment on the screen. So, without further ado, fasten your seatbelt because we're starting. If this kind of content helps you make better decisions, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any analysis. Your support is crucial for us to continue creating videos like this. 11th place, Jeep. Few names in the industry generate as many mixed feelings as Jeep. For many, it is the symbol of adventure, of off-road freedom, of traversing mountains and muddy roads as if nothing could stop them. But that romantic image shatters when we talk about real life. Using a Jeep on a daily basis can become a problem machine. The first major drawback is comfort. Stiff suspension, heavy steering, and internal noises that appear even in new models. What should feel like a modern SUV ends up reminiscent of a vehicle from another era. The Jeep Compass, for example, which should be the brand's jewel in Latin America, disappoints with an engine that offers barely average performance and fuel consumption that hurts the wallet. The Jeep Renegade, which was sold as an urban and accessible SUV, suffers from the same issues: weak engines, high consumption, and low-quality interior finishes. The plastics scratch easily, the fittings produce creaks with use, and the multimedia system always seems to be one step behind the competition. But the most worrying are the recurring mechanical problems. The Compass 2.0 diesel, for example, accumulates complaints about failures in the turbine and the automatic gearbox, and when it's time to repair, the blow is hard. Expensive parts, limited availability, and workshops that often take weeks to get the spare parts. And of course, there is no shortage of recalls. Jeep has had to recall thousands of units for problems with the brakes, defective airbags, and serious electronic failures that can shut off the engine while in motion. The result is that even after the repair, many users claim that the problems reappear. Depreciation is another nightmare. A new Jeep Renegade loses a large part of its value in just 3 years. And selling it used is not easy, because the market already knows about its problematic reputation. So the owner not only spends on maintenance but also loses money when trying to get rid of the vehicle. In short, Jeep is the typical case of love and hate. Whoever buys thinking of extreme adventures may be able to forgive its flaws, but for everyday use, what you find is an accumulation of frustrations, high costs, and a reliability that leaves much to be desired. 10th place, Jaguar. When you hear Jaguar, you think of British luxury, sophisticated design, and powerful engines. It's a brand that for decades built an image of exclusivity. But the current reality is very far from that image. In reliability rankings, Jaguar usually appears at the bottom, and it's no coincidence. The Ingenium diesel engines, which equip several of its models, are known for being real-time bombs, overheating, serious mechanical failures, and, in some cases, engines that stop working completely. The onboard technology doesn't help either. The infotainment system, which should be modern and fluid, is one of the most criticized on the market. Screens that freeze, electronic gear selectors that stop responding, and failures in the electrical systems of the seats are just some of the most frequent complaints. An emblematic case is the Jaguar F-Pace, which was a sales success at its launch, but over time it became a headache for thousands of owners. Failures in the instrument panel, batteries that discharge for no apparent reason, and a long list of recalls. The F-Pace alone was was recalled more than 12 times for different safety problems. The cost of maintenance is another nightmare. Keeping a Jaguar in good condition in Latin America can cost thousands of dollars a year. Scheduled services are expensive, and unforeseen problems are practically guaranteed. Models like the XF or the F-Pace itself need major repairs almost every year. To top it off, the interior design, which should be a strong point, seems to have been left behind in time. Since 2014, the brand has not made significant changes to its style, and what should feel modern ends up looking outdated. The after-sales service also leaves much to be desired. Customers report endless waits for parts and dealerships more interested in selling new models than in solving the problems of existing ones. In conclusion, Jaguar sells an image of luxury and exclusivity, but delivers an experience of frustration and constant expenses. What should be a dream car becomes a source of financial nightmares. 9th place, Chrysler. At one time, Chrysler was a symbol of the American automobile, but what once represented innovation and luxury is now a distant memory. The brand has been dragging for decades with problems and changes of ownership that never managed to solve its weaknesses. One of the most emblematic models is the Chrysler Pacifica, a minivan that should be comfortable and safe for families. However, it collects complaints about engines that suddenly shut off, cruise control failures, and serious electrical problems. In 2018, more than 15,000 units were recalled for a software error in the engine. The Chrysler 300, a sedan that sought to compete with premium brands, also did not deliver on its promise. Failures in the suspension, premature wear of components, and an interior full of cheap plastics disappointed buyers who were expecting luxury. The biggest headache is in the after-sales service. Dealerships are known for blaming the customer for the problems. When a component fails, instead of covering it under warranty, they often claim natural wear and tear or misuse, and if they agree to repair it, the process is usually slow, with endless delays in getting parts. Chrysler's recent history is chaotic. It passed through the hands of Daimler-Benz, then Fiat, and is now part of the Stellantis group. But no matter who is in charge, the problems persist. The lack of quality control is evident. In Brazil and other countries in the region, the Chrysler 300C is still sold in small quantities, but with a terrible reputation, high consumption, very expensive repairs, and such rapid depreciation that few risk buying it used. In conclusion, Chrysler is an example of how a brand with history can lose its prestige. Cars that should convey confidence and luxury end up being a huge financial burden for their owners. 8th place, Nissan. For years, Nissan was synonymous with reliability. Models like the Sentra, the Tsuru in Mexico, or the Frontier pickup in Brazil and Argentina were known as cars that lasted a lifetime. They were simple to maintain, economical, and durable. But everything changed in recent decades, and today, Nissan is a clear example of how a reputation can fall apart. The turning point, according to many specialists, was the alliance with Renault. What seemed like a strategy to strengthen both companies ended up directly affecting the quality of the vehicles. Since then, customers began to notice that the finishes were more fragile, the engines less durable, and, above all, that the brand bet heavily on a technology that became its biggest nightmare, the CVT transmission. The famous continuously variable automatic transmission was sold as the solution of the future: greater smoothness when driving, lower fuel consumption, and less mechanical wear. But the reality was different. Thousands of owners around the world report the same thing. The CVT starts having problems much earlier than expected: vibrations when accelerating, loss of power on hills, strange noises, and, in extreme cases, the transmission breaking before 100,000 kilometers. And the worst part, the repair cost can easily exceed $3,000 or $5,000 depending on the model. The Nissan Kicks, a compact SUV that should be ideal for the city, is a good example. In theory, it was designed to combine style, economy, and reliability. In practice, it collects complaints about transmission overheating. There are drivers who tell how, in the middle of the highway, the car loses power and goes into protection mode, forcing them to stop on the shoulder without warning. The Nissan Versa, popular among those looking for an affordable sedan, also shows serious problems. The fuel pump, a fundamental part, has failed in thousands of units. Some countries force the brand to do recalls, but in others, customers had to pay for repairs that easily exceed $1,000 out of their own pocket. The small Nissan March, equipped with a 1.6 engine, suffers from another chronic problem: premature oil consumption. What should be an economical vehicle ends up being a ruin, as the lack of lubrication can damage the entire engine. And, as if that weren't enough, Nissan was among the brands most affected by the Takata airbag scandal. Millions of cars had to be recalled because the safety system could turn into a deadly weapon, injuring occupants instead of protecting them. Models like the Sentra and Versa were directly involved. Furthermore, there are constant complaints of premature corrosion on the bodywork, problems with the brakes, and infotainment systems that seem outdated from day one. And if you thought that at least consumption was a point in its favor, the reality is disappointing. Pickups like the Frontier hardly exceed 8 km/h, and even the Kicks, which should be economical, often doesn't go beyond 10 km/h in the city. In short, Nissan is the typical case of you get what you pay for, an accessible initial price that turns into an endless bill with repairs, loss of value, and constant frustrations. 7th place, General Motors, Chevrolet. To talk about General Motors is to talk about one of the largest companies in automotive history. The Chevrolet brand is a classic in Brazil, Mexico, Argentina, and much of Latin America. Who hasn't seen an Onix, a Cruze, or a Tracker on the street? But popularity doesn't always mean reliability, and GM is living proof of that. The problem starts with the build quality. Many models show hard plastics, poorly fitted finishes, and fragile buttons. The paint is another weak point. In coastal areas, it is not uncommon to see cars with premature corrosion, even with just a few years of use. The Chevrolet Cruze and the Tracker share an automatic transmission famous for its failures, the GF6. This transmission has a history of overheating, jerking, and complete failures even before reaching 100,000 km. Repairing it can cost more than $2,500, an expense that nobody expects in a relatively new car. GM's dark history includes one of the largest recalls in the world, the one for the defective ignition switch in 2014, which could shut off the engine while the car was in motion. Millions of vehicles were affected, and in many cases, there were fatal accidents. And the worst part, the company was slow to acknowledge the problem, generating global outrage. In Latin America, the Chevrolet Onix Plus also faced its own scandal. It was recalled for risk of fire in the fuel tank. Imagine buying the best-selling car in the country and finding out that it can catch fire due to a factory defect. The Ecotec engines, like the 1.4 turbo, are not spared either. They have a reputation for overheating, leaking oil, and having premature failures in the turbine. In theory, a modern and efficient engine. In practice, a constant headache. And if we talk about after-sales service, GM customers know the ordeal well. Warranties that are not honored, poorly done repairs at official dealerships, and long delays in getting parts. What should be a solution ends up being a frustrating experience. In the end, buying a Chevrolet may seem like a good idea because of the initial price and the wide network of dealerships. But the reality is different. Frequent mechanical problems, rapid depreciation, and customer service that leaves much to be desired. 6th place, Volkswagen. In Latin America, Volkswagen is almost synonymous with tradition. Models like the Fusca, Beetle, the Combi, or the Gull-marked generations. The German brand earned the trust of millions thanks to simple, durable, and relatively affordable vehicles. But that nostalgic image contrasts with the current reality. Volkswagen has a series of problems that place it in this ranking of the worst. The big problem is the complexity of its engineering. What seems simple from the outside is actually a puzzle when you open the hood. Independent mechanics report that working on a modern Volkswagen is a complicated task. Too many sensors, cramped components, and electronic systems that require expensive equipment to be diagnosed. The result? More expensive labor and multiplying repairs. The Volkswagen Jetta, sold as a sophisticated sedan, often causes headaches with the electrical system and suspension. The Tiguan, a premium SUV, has complaints about problems with the air conditioning, the infotainment system, and the digital panel, which sometimes turns off without explanation. The 1.0 TSI engines, present in models like the Virtus and the Polo, are also a weak point. Although Although on paper they offer efficiency and good performance, in practice they present problems with the turbine and the cooling system. When the turbine fails, the repair can cost more than $2,000. And let's not forget the recalls. Volkswagen has a complicated history, from the famous Dieselgate, where the brand was caught cheating on emissions tests, to multiple recent recalls for defective airbags, steering failures, and brake problems. Many owners report that, even after the repair, the car is never the same again. The service at dealerships is another recurring complaint. Customers report being pushed to pay for expensive and unnecessary services, while warranties are often rejected under vague excuses. And to top it off, the depreciation is steep. Models like the Jetta or the Tiguan, which cost a fortune new, lose value quickly and are difficult to resell on the second-hand market. In short, Volkswagen may still have a base of nostalgic fans, but the reality is that today it represents high costs, constant problems, and a disappointing experience. Fifth place, Land Rover. For many, having a Land Rover in the garage is a status symbol. They are imposing vehicles with an elegant design, perfect for attracting attention in the city and at the same time conveying the idea that they are ready for any adventure. But behind that sophisticated image lies a very different reality. Land Rover is one of the brands with the most complaints and the worst reputation for reliability. The problem starts with the materials. Although sold as luxury SUVs, many owners report low-quality components. The rubber seals on the doors and sunroof dry out quickly, causing water leaks. Imagine paying tens of thousands of dollars for an SUV and discovering that on rainy days it seems like a sieve. And the problems don't stop there. Land Rover's electrical systems are a real headache. Dashboard lights that turn on for no reason, failing sensors, and screens that freeze just when you need them most. Owner forums are full of stories of people who have had to restart the infotainment system in the middle of the highway as if it were an old computer. Another major villain is the air suspension. In theory, it should provide superior comfort, adapting to the terrain. In practice, it is a constant source of expenses. Many report that it fails before 100,000 km, and when that happens, the repair cost can exceed $3,000. And if you thought that at least such an expensive vehicle would hold its resale value well, here comes another disappointment. Land Rover depreciates at an alarming rate. Models like the Discovery or the Range Rover Evoque, which cost a fortune new, lose up to half of their value in just 5 years. And even so, selling them is not easy because nobody wants to take on someone else's problem. Maintenance costs are disproportionate. Changing brakes or tires can cost between $2,000 and $4,000, and routine checkups often include parts and services that inflate the final bill. Even after the brand was acquired by Tata Motors in 2008, the problems did not disappear. In fact, many users consider that reliability continued to decline. And to make matters worse, Land Rover has very high theft rates in several countries, which makes insurance even more expensive. Compared to more modest SUVs, like the Toyota RAV4 or the Honda CR-V, Land Rover comes off very poorly, and that is a shame for a brand that insists on selling itself as premium. In the end, what you buy is a combination of superficial luxury and endless headaches. What should be an experience of status and pleasure becomes a bottomless pit of expenses, frustrations, and visits to workshops. Fourth place. Audi is the perfect example of how luxury can become a trap. Its cars are dazzling in design, elegant lines, futuristic LED headlights, and that four-ring logo that conveys prestige on any street. But behind that sophisticated appearance, the reality is bitter. Audi collects electronic problems, very expensive maintenance, and a reliability that leaves much to be desired. The technological systems that should be its strong point are, in fact, its greatest weakness. Models like the Audi Q5 and the Audi A3 suffer from screens that freeze, failing sensors, and dashboards that constantly show errors. In reliability rankings like J.D. Power, Audi appears just above the industry average, which is unacceptable for a brand that sells itself as premium. The 2.0 TFSI engines present in the Audi A4 and the Q3 are known for fuel pump failures. When it breaks, the replacement cost easily exceeds $2,000 in specialized workshops, and the suspension, too fragile for irregular streets, generates additional expenses every few years. Even routine services are absurdly expensive. A simple oil change in an Audi can cost 3 times more than in a conventional car. And if we talk about brakes or shock absorbers, repairs, the bill can exceed $2,500 without a problem. The after-sales service is not as expected either. During the warranty period, customers receive VIP treatment, but as soon as it expires, everything changes. Long waits, inflated costs, and partial solutions. Fuel consumption is another weak point. Although the turbo engines offer power, they also drink much more than promised in the city. In short, Audi sells glamour and technology, but delivers endless expenses, a luxury trap that many fall into for appearances, but which quickly transforms into a machine of frustrations. Third place, BMW. For many, owning a BMW is a dream come true. It's the car that commands respect on the street, symbolizes status, and promises a superior driving experience. But behind that charm lies a bitter reality. BMW is a brand that can empty your wallet with constant problems and astronomical maintenance costs. The turbo engines are one of the main culprits. The famous N20 2.0 turbo, which equips models like the 3 Series, has a chronic problem with the timing chain. If this part fails, the entire engine can be destroyed, and the repair easily exceeds $6,000. The N55, present in models like the 335i, is known for oil leaks and fuel pump failures, and the N63 V8 is a straight-up catastrophe. Excessive oil consumption, electrical problems, and cooling systems that fail as if they were time bombs. The suspension doesn't help either. In countries with streets full of potholes like most of Latin America, the components wear out quickly, generating noises, vibrations, and constant bills at the workshops. Even in recent models like the X1 or the X3, owners report premature failures in the shock absorbers and annoying noises while driving. And let's not forget the cooling system. Radiators that crack, defective water pumps, and thermostats that stop working. In 2020, the brand had to recall more than 700,000 vehicles worldwide because a defective water pump could cause overheating and even fires. The after-sales service is another source of complaints. Many customers report dealerships that push unnecessary services, deny warranties with weak excuses, and charge abusive prices for simple repairs. What should be a premium experience ends up being a chain of frustrations. And if you thought that at least the resale value compensated, the surprise is big. A BMW 3 Series, which can cost more than $60,000 new, loses almost half of its value in just 5 years. Many fall into the trap of buying a cheap, used one, but then discover that the savings disappear in constant repairs. In short, BMW delivers driving pleasure, yes, powerful engines, impeccable stability, and an attractive design. But that pleasure comes at a very high price, not just at the dealership, but at every visit to the workshop. Second place, Mercedes-Benz. There was a time when a Mercedes-Benz was practically indestructible. In the 80s and 90s, the brand's models were built like tanks. Buying one was an investment for a lifetime, but those days are long gone. Starting in the 2000s, quality began to decline. A clear example is the paint. By adopting water-based formulas, what seemed like an ecological innovation ended up generating premature corrosion in many units, especially in humid or coastal regions. The electronics, another point where Mercedes sought to differentiate itself, became a source of problems. Failing sensors, assistance systems that stop working, and digital screens that freeze. What should be a futuristic experience becomes a technological nightmare after a few years of use. One of the best-known cases is the 7G Tronic automatic transmission. In theory, a work of advanced engineering. In practice, a system that requires expensive and frequent maintenance. If it's not done exactly on time, the gearbox can fail, and the repair cost easily exceeds $3,000. The Airmatic suspension, present in models like the S-Class or the GLE, also collects complaints. When it works, it offers incredible comfort, but when it fails, the vehicle can become uneven, and the repair is one of the most expensive on the market, reaching over $5,000. And let's not forget consumption. Although Mercedes has introduced more efficient engines, most of its models are still heavy and powerful, which translates into high fuel consumption in the city. The after-sales service is not up to par either. Owners report that dealerships recommend expensive and often unnecessary repairs. Warranties that should cover obvious failures are rejected with unconvincing explanations. The result is that what seemed like a symbol of success and luxury ends up being a financial burden. Mercedes-Benz still has an impeccable design and a prestige that seduces, but behind the star emblem, there is a harsh reality. Maintaining one of the these cars can cost much more than buying it. First place, Volvo. We have reached the #1 spot, and it might be a surprise for many. Volvo. For years, the Swedish brand was synonymous with safety, a pioneer in life-saving innovations with elegant designs and a prestige that made it an object of desire. But behind that reputation, there is a worrying reality. Volvo is one of the least reliable brands on the market today. In the rankings of Consumer Reports, models like the XC40 and the XC60 repeatedly appear with below-average ratings. And the most alarming thing is that even the newest models from 2023 and 2024 show only minimal improvements. The main problem lies in the electronics. Volvo bet heavily on advanced digital systems, but the result is an accumulation of failures. Owners report problems with the climate control, screens that freeze, sensors that suddenly stop working, and, in some cases, errors that directly affect the engine. Imagine paying more than $60,000 for a Volvo XC90 and discovering that the air conditioning doesn't cool in the middle of summer, or that the digital dashboard turns off while you're driving. It's not just frustrating, it's dangerous. And as if that weren't enough, Volvo has faced serious recalls on electronic brake systems. In one of the most recent ones, thousands of vehicles were recalled because the braking assistant could stop working in emergency situations. In other words, a car that is sold as the safest in the world could, at a critical moment, fail to stop. Maintenance is very expensive. Owners spend on average more than $4,000 a year on repairs and services. Over a 10-year period, maintaining a Volvo can exceed $70,000, more than many luxury brands. And it gets worse after the warranty ends. In short, Volvo offers style, comfort, and a prestige built over decades. But today, it represents a risky bet: expensive cars, constant problems, and very high costs. A safe car, yes, but one you can't rely on. These were the 11 worst car brands you should not buy in 2025. Brands that shine in advertising, but in real life become a trap for your wallet and your patience. Tell me in the comments, have you owned any of these models? Do you agree with the ranking, or would you add another brand? Your experience can help thousands of people not to make the same mistake. And don't go yet. In the next video, I'm going to show you why old engines last longer than new ones, and also the 12 most devalued SUVs of 2025. Believe me, you don't want to miss it. So check if you've already left your like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with that friend who is thinking about changing cars, because a timely piece of advice can save them a lot of headaches.